still driving, so I'm trying very hard not to really look.
Okay,
That's good.
we are ready.
Be
Okay,
safe.
we're ready.
Okay.
Okay, let's call the meeting of the Personnel Committee for the McHenry County Board of Health to order at 7:06 p.m. Committee members present are Joe Clark.
Lupe Ortiz.
Julie Morowski.
Staff present is
Ann Marin.
Melissa Adamson?
Darlene Vollant.
public participation. I don't see any or hear anybody.
Oop, you gotta let me in.
Vote.
You gotta
We have to vote to let her in, yeah.
Oh, that's right. We do have a remote participation tonight from Ms. Altoff. Do I hear a committee member that moves to allow her to participate remotely?
I'll move to allow him all to
Second?
participate.
Second?
I second.
Motion's
Lupe
been
second.
Motion by Ms. Borowski, second by Ms. Ortiz. All those in favor of the motion signify by aye. Those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. She's permitted to participate.
Thank you.
Minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have the minutes? No.
No minutes.
Okay, no minutes. New and unfinished business. First item is the merit increase. And we will let staff
Sure,
make a
so
presentation.
similar to last year, so in your packet, so every year, the county board sets the merit. So for fiscal year '24, which starts December 1, it is a 4% merit. The pool is given to each department based on filled positions, so not based on our number of positions we have, right? We have some vacant positions, so it's based on filled positions. And it's prorated based on hire date, that's in the packet, so anyone who was hired after September 30th, there's no merit allocated for those positions. And if you want more information about how many, we have roughly 109 positions, FTEs that are filled right now, and 11, a little more than 11 that are vacant. So for a total of 120.93 positions. But we're only, and of those 109, there's actually a couple of people who will roll off because they are no longer here. So the county will not give us merit for those positions. So similar to last year, every year we've brought this to the Board of Health to make a recommendation of how you would like to distribute the merit. The county uses its performance evaluation form. We use a slightly different form from the county, but just for maybe our newer member, in the past, because the county does not do a cost of living adjustment. They call it merit. So there's not cost of living and merit, there is just merit. It has fluctuated over the years, anywhere from I think since I've been here, 2.5% to 4% on the high side. And in prior years, that's in the memo, the board has elected to distribute it more like a cost of living adjustment so that all staff receive that 4%.
And the county gives you the money for 4% for everybody, just in case you give 4% for everybody?
No, so for those people who were hired based on that prorated, so we have, give me just a second here and I will sort this sheet. We have, why didn't that work for me? I'll have to add up, let me do this a different way. So we have people who have 2% and people who have 3%, and then the remaining staff who are 4%.
So
Based on that prorated amount, based on when they were hired. So the staff who were hired more recently, between September and June through September,
June through
it's 50%. Between March and May, it's 75%, and anyone that was hired December or prior to the end of February, it's 100%. So that's how they base our total pool. So we could have the choice based on performance, that if somebody's a poor performer, somebody gets nothing or 1%, that frees up dollars to provide merit, a true merit, I guess, based on performance. That has not been what the board has done in recent years. I can't speak to, 5+ years.
I've always been kind of diametrically opposed to calling a merit increase, calling a cost of living increase a merit increase. I mean, they're two separate things.
Well, the county calls it a merit.
And it shouldn't be, then they should also give a cost of living. I mean, I remember having this whole discussion last year.
But as Ms. Adamson said,
This is what
this county only recognizes merit increases. I don't necessarily agree with that, like you, but the history of the McHenry County Board going back at least 10 years has not identified cost of living adjustments. They have taken the position that employees only receive additional compensation if their performance merits an increase. They don't even follow a pay scale system that's scheduled. So operating within the system that is presented under the current leadership, we have recommended merit increases that will help the employees adjust to inflation. And yes, in the past, the percentage was, some people would get none, some people would get 4.5%, 5%, 6%. But that was when cost of living was 0, 1%, et cetera. So there was not much of a cost of living adjustment. That's not the current scenario.
Now, as a reminder, the county is doing its compensation study every 2 years. So we're actually about to go in, I believe, the start of 24, the calendar year 24, is when they are going to push that information out to the other counties and implement that compensation study. So they will look for comparisons, they'll reach out to the other counties, they use a consultant and try to find comparables to look at where does McHenry County fit within that, and presumably would make adjustments that I believe will take effect starting next July. That has been the pattern.
Correct.
That they do the study in the early winter, spring, and then it goes through the county approval process to start and make adjustments July 1st.
And just to give you a perspective, I apologize. To give you a perspective, the last study that was just completed cost the county $2 million to bring many people up to what felt was, above average for the areas, because it was so long since the last one was done, which is why we now are going to do it every 2 years to ensure that we're actually paying people, a living wage.
Very good.
You had mentioned that the county does this, but that we haven't always done, like, the board hasn't? What has the board done?
So how the county does it and applies to other departments, right? Because we have our own Board of Health, the Board of Health can dictate how that, so they can't dictate the pool we get, That's set by the county, again, based on those filled positions, but the board has the authority through the code to determine how to set that internally for ourselves, how we want to distribute it.
I see it as the McHenry County Board extends a courtesy to the Board of Health to allow us to set the rate, because we are more familiar with the day-to-day operations of the department.
And what have we done in the past?
So the last few years, we've distributed more like a complete COLA, so a cost of living adjustment. So so people, we still have to do performance evaluations, but these dollars are not distributed based on how well or poorly you've done on your performance evaluation.
That would be my preference.
The choices that you really have in front of you is you can put forth a motion to authorize a 4% merit increase across the board, or you can put forth a motion that would extend authority to the department administrator and the various directors to issue merit increases based on performance evaluations and the matrix that has been identified by the county. That's really the two choices you got.
Well, I would move to give them the 4% across the board. I still don't think we're close to covering the inflation rates.
But actually, the inflation rate over the last 12 months is about 3% for the CPI. It's come down. But like, last year, let's say, I forgot what it was last year, but let's say it was 4% last year. Well, the cost of living was 7.5%, 8% last year, so the employees already slid backwards.
Right.
So if it is 3% and you get 4% this year, that are making up 1% that was lost in previous years.
Yeah, I would agree, I think, I would agree with you. I would say 4%, but then that also makes it difficult where, what do we do with our high performing?
Right.
How do we encourage that motivation of high
Exactly,
performing?
and it's a conversation I feel like we have every single year. We had that conversation again today at our directors meeting, and because of the timing now, we wanted to discuss, if the committee's amenable, looking at a goal for 2024, right? To revisit the performance evaluation process and see explore what other alternatives and incentives, if it's not money, are there other options that we could explore to reward people for high performance? Because that is a struggle. It's a struggle every year that people who are going well above and beyond are getting the same amount as somebody who's, an average performer, or maybe even potentially not performing where they need to be.
So what do your directors think? Do you have any idea what their preferences would be on this?
What we discussed today is, because the pool, we don't get any additional money for those open positions, there's very little wiggle. So let's say you had in your division a lot of high performers. You have to take from somewhere else to give them more than 4, for example.
And you can
So
only-
it is a struggle, and there's not enough there, right? To, do you give them 0.5% more? But you'd have to take that 0.5 from somewhere else.
Well, and you would have to follow this matrix, which only allows you to go to 4.25.
Well, 4.5
Or 4.5 to 4.25, depending
to
upon
4.25,
which quarter
depending on
you're
where
in.
you fall within the
So,
scale.
yeah, but to do that, you're gonna have to take an average employee and bring them down.
Right, so let's say you have 2 employees both getting 4%, and you want to give one 4.5, you gotta give the other person 3.5.
Yeah.
But the average employee that comes in, does their job description, does a good job. They don't go above and beyond, they don't, but they do their job.
Yeah, always meets expectations,
Correct.
4% right there.
If if you don't adjust the salary to inflation, they keep losing. They work next year for less money than they made last year.
And I'll say this because I know it also is a point that's brought up year after year. So in addition to, so the county gives us 4% pool, they will also adjust the scale by 2%. Right? So you're not so the scale's gonna move by 2%.
No, I'm not following that.
Yeah.
So the entry wage right now of like a,
Oh.
it moves by 2%. So somebody who just gets 4% and somebody gets hired the next day, they're already 2% closer. Does that make sense?
Okay, so they only move the scale for the starting rates.
Or anybody who is below it. So after it moves, if you're below the scale, they'll move you up.
Okay.
Now, we shouldn't have too many of those because of the prior adjustments that have been made. I wouldn't expect too many of those at this point. Most people hopefully have moved far enough along, but we haven't done the math on that yet.
And then we go back to a discussion that we've had before, where the vacant positions, we don't get that.
No, they will not give us
They
the
won't.
4% for the vacant ones. If we did, then we would have some
wiggle
additional
room.
pool to dole out to the high performers, yes.
And that would be nice. No, that's not possible. But I mean, we talk about it all the time. If there's vacant positions, other people are picking up that workload. So
Mhm.
it's hard.
Correct, there's vacant positions up.
Other people are
Rest of the
picking up
workforce
that,
is
so
going
they
in.
should, if anything, should be the ones that are picking up the workload and performance is showing and workload is showing, then they should be rewarded for that.
Right. I think everybody 100% agrees people should be
Uh-huh.
rewarded for their performance. The challenge is, how do you do that and balance cost of living and
And when you say like not related to rate or pay, what are other incentives that we?
well, I don't know. We'd have to explore those. Like, I think somebody brought up that, and I don't know I can't remember what they said, how long in the past, but like additional time off or something, like days, people would get, do you remember that conversation, Ann, today? They were talking about in the past, like you could, I don't know, like upgrade to like a day off. It was unrelated to performance, I believe. Like you could cash in, let's say, some of your time and get an additional personal day or something. You know, is that something that we could explore as instead of pay, direct, adjustment to your salary? Could we give additional time based on performance, right? And come up with some kind of matrix.
I think you have the authority to do that.
I don't think we can do that right now, right? Like, I think we have to build it.
Right.
And get it vetted and see if,
Correct.
so that's why we were saying we would look to do that, in the first part of 2024 to see if that's possible.
Evaluations are used for is promotions. Somebody that was gonna move from this level to the next level. When there's a pool of candidates, there's many evaluations have a point scheme that they can apply to it that would make one candidate more favorable than the other candidate based on their performance evaluation. And that's another item that can be utilized.
If people want it, so that's the difficult part. If
Well,
people
correct.
want those promotions, right?
Well, we are, not to get sidetracked, it's not on the agenda, but we are moving forward with the succession planning. And so the survey that the contractor is putting together ideally identifies people who are interested in promotions or exploring opportunities to position you to be ready to compete for a position when it becomes available.
Pam, what's your thoughts on the
My
raises?
question, during the directors meeting, did people come to the top, Melissa, with regard to increases? I mean, are there that you definitely immediately want to give them increase to?
Oh, so we didn't talk about specific individuals. We just conceptually talked about, the year after year dilemma of how do you reward people while also acknowledging cost of living changes. But we did not talk about specifics, but I have no doubt that each director already knows who those top performers are, right? If they had a pool of money to dole out, could already identify who they would distribute those dollars to.
So the stated is you give everybody the 4% because, again, cost of living this year, or do we give everybody 3.5 and give you a pool of some fund for those directors to use for those high-performing individuals? And that's purely just a conversation we have amongst ourselves. And I do like investigating the feasibility of giving people extra time off if for high performance. I do like that. We should do that.
So that is an option.
That's,
I don't know, I mean, there was some conversation, and again, I did not do the math on that. Is that gonna be enough, right? That remaining 0.5%, does that give us enough money to dole out? I mean, it's something over nothing, right? And I could certainly have that prepared before the November.
But it can also, if the difference isn't adequate enough, then it becomes an insult.
Exactly right.
right.
Right, and I think that's one of the things we talked about
get-
today, is like it just doesn't amount to,
I'm gonna get a nickel an hour more for everything, well, that's,
Yeah.
just keep it.
Yeah, shoelaces.
Right.
Don't eat it to the coffee club.
Regardless if it's a little, I agree. But I do think that we should have a combination of like the days off and the increase in pay and other things. And, because some people, appreciate other things other than just a higher wage.
I do remember one year, one place that I worked where if you were a high performer, they were giving cost of living raises, and they were not giving merit raises because it was a bad year or whatever. And, but the board took the manager's top 2 high performers from their unit out to dinner at like a fancy place. And that was actually kind of fun because at least you got some recognition and a good meal. And the whole board, which I think I've only seen a whole board of directors once in my life, and that was at that hospital. It was a little more meaningful than the usual minimal raise or the little award they give you, Daisy Award or whatever crap they thought up. So I don't know, maybe that would be something.
We do have some funds for that, right, with the,
well, that gets a little tricky with the auditor.
okay,
But yes, we do have some employee recognition
right?
funds. And I can do some math before the next Board of Health meeting, but typically you all bring a recommendation forward. I don't know how useful this would be, but I calculated the last listed salary of all the vacant positions, right? So we have 11 and a half vacant positions. And 4% of that is like $21,000. Let's say, and maybe this is on the high side, I just took a third of total positions we have. Let's say we had a third of people operating at the highest level. Let's say everybody got a piece of that equally, it'd be about $587 per person,
Per year.
just for that one bump for the year.
For the year.
On top of whatever they're already, on top of that 4%, let's say. So again, that could be varied, but, and if, let's say there were more than that, let's say there were 40%, then that number is gonna go down.
Yeah, but out of that 500, you have to take off your
Right,
taxes, your
and then
pension,
divide that by
everything.
26 pay periods,
Right.
and
You're down to pennies.
it's not gonna,
Yeah.
visually, it's not gonna look like a lot. For some people, it might be meaningful,
Mhm.
right? So I don't wanna like diminish that too much, but it's math at the end of the day, and I guess I can't really say, how many people would be like, thank you very much, or how many people would be like, I would prefer to explore other options because it's really not enough to be impactful. It might be, right? But we don't have that available to us, right? So we're back to taking what we have, and if we do 3.5%, that's one of the suggestions, I can do the math on that to figure out what it would be. But I know, I just tried to do some quick math, and there's something, my number doesn't match up with the county's number at this point, so we need to, I'll need to revisit that to make sure, even, because I took positions out that I know, the county sent over a sheet, there's a few positions on there that people have left, so I already know those have to come off the roster, and even when I do that, our numbers don't match, so it's less of, let's say, on the high side, it'd be around 30,000, but I know it's not that number, it's lower than that. But I'm happy to calculate that if that's something that the board wants to consider.
Well, you want this committee to make a decision tonight so that we can recommend it to the full board at our next monthly meeting, so a decision can be made that night, so you can
That's
enact
true.
it by December 1st.
But if you wanted me to calculate the 3.5% as an example, and just take the or we take that 0.5% and decide, yep, we're gonna dole it out to those high or give the division directors the authority and the discretion to choose how to use that amount. Now, in everybody's case, it might not be a full 0.5%, because if they have people on their roster that are only getting 3% or 2% based on that prorated amount, do you see what I'm saying? It'll be a little bit less.
I still think we should be catching up with the cost of living thing. I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, basically, with this no cost of living raise offered by the county. Because you're putting the onus on the directors as far as merit goes, and there's not a lot of money out there nowadays. Life is very expensive. So the folks that get 2% or 2.5% are hardly benefiting and probably not motivated to work harder, for 4%. I mean, I just hate the way it shakes out to be the director's dilemma.
Everybody's questions been pretty well answered by staff? Anybody got any further questions? Does anybody want to be recognized for a motion?
I'll move.
To distribute the 4% with the prorated, obviously, and across the staff, across the board.
I'll second that.
Ms. Borowski made a motion to authorize staff to award 4% merit increase to all staff members that are eligible, seconded by Ms. Altoff. It's a monetary issue, so a roll call needs to be taken.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Morowski?
Yes.
Ms. Ortiz?
Yes.
Ms. Altoff?
Yes.
The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the Public Health Administrator's Performance Process. It is the time, and this is something to be done in an open meeting at this point. It is the time of the year that we conduct the annual performance of Melissa Adamson. I wanted to hear from the committee members if they had any requests as far as the procedures and the methods to conduct the evaluation. You want to do it the same we did as last year, or you want to do it on a more formal process with a form and such? I wanted to hear from the board, the committee members on how we want to move forward.
Personally, I like the way we did it last year because we're a small group and it doesn't have to be a formal, we're interviewing 50 people for their input. I think it's a lot more, and I think it's a lot more fruitful to do it in a group like we do it because we can talk things over and not have to just write something down on a piece of paper and then if somebody brings something up, you can't amend it. It's already, do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I personally like that better. I don't know what other people think.
I don't disagree. The way we did it is fine.
Okay?
I was not here for last year. But I agree. I've seen performance reviews that way, and I think in small groups, and ours is small enough to, I see no problem with it. I think that brings the best dialogue.
Yeah, and it kind of clarifies what we think our goals and what, you can clarify it by speaking with other people instead of having some idea that, that's totally unrealistic and then I can't have Darlene saying, what are you thinking about, right? How are you thinking? You kind of need that, I think, so I agree.
There's more clarity to
Okay.
what's expected.
What do you
It
think?
would be my goal to get this completed before the January meeting, so that any adjustment to wages can be awarded and retroactivity be discussed and hopefully approved. So between now and January's meeting, we would have to have another personnel committee meeting where we can sit across the table from Melissa and conduct the evaluation. Does anybody have an objection to meeting one more time between now and the first of the year? Some day in December would probably work best.
Fine by me?
Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
it's fine.
Oh, fine by you, okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so that's what we'll do. We will have staff poll and come up with a date for having a personnel committee meeting to conduct a performance evaluation of the administrator. Good.
And then do we present it to the whole board and then they approve?
Correct.
That is- Okay.
Let's put that on the agenda for the board meeting here to allow me to present to the full board our desires to conduct the performance evaluation at the committee level and get their approval to do that. And yes, once we create the goals and the rate evaluation, that is approved by the full board. We all get an opportunity to read it. And if anyone has input, they can share that with any of the committee members before we go into the evaluation session. Okay? Is there a need to go into executive session for any reason? Nobody indicates a need to go into executive session. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I motion to adjourn. I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Ortiz, second by Ms. Borowski to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those that are opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can't discuss anything. Okay.